Hello, audio fans and music listeners. My name is Gavin. I am your host here at the Audiophile Wannabe Show, where we like to remind our listeners that whereas beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so too is sound in the ear of the listener. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you are doing very well. We are doing the fourth video today in our series of maximizing your stereo system or your sound system's true potential. And so we will be talking about how to improve your signal path. But before we go further, just want to remind everyone that's participating in this process of trying to maximize your sound system's potential. As we mentioned in the last video, hope that by this point, if you've got your sound stage, you've done some room treatments, you've done some dampening throughout your system, and you've started taking some notes, because by this point you should be hearing some definite improvements somewhere along the way in the music that you've listened to for many years, and you've probably heard some things differently. And those are the things that you want to take notes of and start testing as you continue to make improvements from this point forward in your system, because with each one of those little checkpoints that you're really familiar with, you can tell all those subtle little differences, how big they of a change or a benefit they can make. In case in point, got first testimony from one of my viewers, actually Papa G, Mr. Gary, that was very kind enough to build the farmhouse style distressed looking audio rack that's in my listening room. Beautiful piece of equipment. Love that thing. Shout out for Papa G again for that. Did a little video for him on that one. It's in the catalog if you want to check that out, video catalog. But got to visit with him this week, and he is tickled pink just from having found a soundstage. So he's been a music listener his whole life, and just like we've been talking about, he has begun to hear things differently in songs that he's been familiar with for the past 40 or 50 years. So he was very, very happy to be able to describe what he had been listening. And so in the not too distant future, I'll probably do my first little testimonial in more detail on his experience. So just wanted to let you guys know that just from establishing a soundstage, you can start getting some very good results. So just wanted to pass that along as well. So I don't know how the the topic of a signal path comes across to you guys. Is it something that's important or not really? It's at first, when I started testing this area, I didn't really know what to expect or what I was getting into with trying to improve and upgrade cables, various components, upgrade crossovers, things like that. And what I've learned so far, and this will apply in different ways, obviously, to different viewers who are testing this in your system, depending on your system, how old it is, that sort of thing. But every system has a noise floor, as some of you may be familiar with. And basically that's the amount of background noise that's in your system. And the thing about a noise floor, it's there whether or not you can hear it. Sometimes it's more audible than others. Sometimes you may have a little bit of a static. Sometimes maybe you can hear something, maybe you can't, but also maybe sometimes there's a hum or a buzz. So there's different potential contributors to the increase in a noise floor. There can be degradation of materials throughout the signal path in your system, anywhere from the wall outlet all the way to the wires that go into the drivers in your speakers. There can be degradation of materials. Every little touch point that comes into play, even in the capacitors in your crossovers or in your amplifier, anything that has had the opportunity to degrade over time, or maybe the materials that make up the various connectors or the wires themselves just aren't up to snuff, and you wind up losing some conductivity. With that loss of conductivity, we can expect to hear more noise in that noise floor. And also, there's the opportunity for electromagnetic interference or radio frequency interference. Noise coming into your system from appliances around the house. Got one testimony to share with you about that, how I was able to help a friend get rid of a buzz that he had in his system. Couldn't locate it anywhere in his system, but we eventually found the culprit for that buzz, and he was happy as a skunk once he got that buzz killed. And just to go back for a second, by this point, we've got our sound stage, so we've got that sound expanded than what you probably were familiar with before. If you found that positioning of your speakers in relationship to the listening position, then you found that magical listening experience that you had never heard before. And then once you added room treatments on top of that, to whatever degree, you're able to expand and build on that sound stage. And from that point, then we talked about dampening. So you can dampen throughout your system. You can dampen your speakers, do vibration elimination in other areas. And at that point, we really begin to tighten up the sound. And so now, by doing signal path improvement and reducing that noise floor, we're refining that sound even more. At this point, I believe in the previous video, we had talked about once we start dampening, it's kind of like using the fine adjustment knob on a pair of binoculars when you're trying to focus in on something. The picture starts to become more clear. And that process certainly continues by helping to reduce the noise floor that's in your background, as well as potential hums and buzzes. Matter of fact, it's at this point to where, in my own personal experience, I began to equate it to removing a fog. If you could think of, I know you probably experienced just driving down the road through a fog. And sometimes fogs can be more dense than others. Sometimes they're very light and they're easy to see through. That's kind of like having a low noise floor. You don't really notice it that much because, like on the road, you can drive through a light fog and it's not really much of a hindrance. But as that fog gets more dense, then it gets harder to see. And as that fog of a noise floor begins to increase, even though we may not necessarily recognize it, it begins to fog up our sound, so to speak, and can smear, can distort, can hide the quality of your sound to whatever extent. And yes, once you go with the higher end cables, power cables, interconnect cables, speaker cables, they definitely make a difference. So the question for this series is, what can we do in the more affordable realm to make improvements in order to determine where we need to spend our money next if we're going to continue improving our system? So where's that low-hanging fruit that we can go after? I mentioned a minute ago about a friend that was able to eliminate a buzz or hum in his system, and that he was extremely happy with that outcome. So first, before we get into improving your sound due to loss of conductivity, let's go ahead and talk about the EMI and RFI interference. And in his case, electrical interference that was coming from a big appliance in the next room. Okay, let me expand this. All right, so this may not sound like much, but man, let me tell you. All right, so these are ferrite magnets, and they do a good job to help stop EMI and RFI interference and electrical noises. So in the case of my friend, and you can see there's various diameters, hole diameters, and they just snap open, and you place it around whatever cable you're looking at, whether it's a speaker cable, interconnect cable, or a power cable of some sort. But they just lock in place, and you can put them on either end of a cable, and they should do, but closer, hopefully, to the source. But you can go ahead and pause that and look at this if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. I feel like I'm talking behind a wall when those pictures are up like that. But in my friend's case, he had that buzz, had a hum, right? So went over to his house, and we looked at his system, put some different size ferrite magnets on various cables. Couldn't really find the source of it. So he went into the adjacent room. There was a big refrigerator in that room, and he wound up putting a ferrite magnet on the power cable to that refrigerator, and would you believe that the hum in his stereo system was cured? So that's just a one-off. I'm not saying that they're going to work that way for every appliance and every component, but every case is different, and you never know where you're going to find some benefits. So that's a really good option to help eliminate various kinds of hums from those kinds of sources. And speaking of different kinds of sources, one of the sources for signals is that fit just about perfect that time, is the source of the power itself. And obviously power is coming out of the wall, but a good power conditioner will certainly help to minimize that or reduce your noise floor. This is the power conditioner that I use in my main listening room. I actually took a ferrite magnet and put it on this power cable adjacent to the not the transformer, but the conditioner itself. So just by installing this conditioner with one of the ferrite magnets on that, I was actually able, hang on one second, I was able to notice a slight benefit. There was a benefit. It wasn't significant just by introducing that, but there was a benefit. And keep in mind, if you don't have a sound stage and all that stuff we've been talking about, the benefit perceived from some of these changes you may not find. But once you've got that sound stage going and everything that we've discussed, when you implement changes like this, you're going to find some benefit to some degree, most likely. And especially once you start going into the higher end products, there's definitely noticeable changes. So the ferrite magnets are pretty cheap, about $20 for a big old bag of those, and those will go a long way. And the power conditioner wasn't too bad for power conditioners, and Furman is one of the best names in power conditioners. When I was playing the guitar, lots of bands traveling and touring use Furman power conditioners, so they do a really good job. Okay, so now getting back to improving your conductivity due to whatever reason with your cables. Maybe they're degraded just from over time, or maybe there's a lot of touch points along the way that have lesser grade materials that are minimizing your conductivity and adding to that noise floor. So I want to just give you an example of what I'm talking about. And again, it just depends on your system as to the various amounts of opportunity that you'll have in this regard. But especially if you have an older system, older components, like I do in the system right over there, that's 1980 or 81 stereo. Actually, I think it may be an 81 or 82 realistic receiver. But the speakers that are over there, I can't get out of the way. But those Klipsch Heresy ones, love those speakers. They are wonderful sounding, but they were a nightmare on the inside of the cabinets when I first got them. So there was lots of resonance and different things going on, contributing to ringing and muddiness and smearing of the sound. But recently, went back in and changed out the speaker connectors on the back of that cabinet, and that's what I'm going to show you real quick. Okay, this is the back of that cabinet, and you can see on the left the speaker connector. And man, I'm hoping, I'm pretty confident that Klipsch doesn't use those things anymore, because that is something when it comes to reducing conductivity in a speaker. So that's going to hurt your sound. So let me show you what that looks like up close. Okay, so look at this jalopy. So you got a big hunk of some kind of plastic, but with these metal bolts or machine screws, whatever they are. But that's what the signal is going through, getting inside these speakers, is these metal bolts. And man, you talking about a poor conductor of electricity in a signal. That's really, I'm not trying to be too dramatic, but that's awful when it comes to sound performance. So I took these out of the equation and put in, just one second. Okay, yep, put in these little boogers right here. Got these off of Parts Express. They're Dayton Audio heavy duty binding posts, banana plugs, binding posts. And these helped my sound. Now, it wasn't just the implementing of these binding posts, but I also put in, hang on one second, upgraded the speaker wire going from those posts to the crossover in the speaker. So went with 16 gauge oxygen-free copper, which replaced the 40-something-year-old copper in the cables that were in there previously. So obviously there had been some degradation there over time, but these were much better wires to begin with than what was in the cabinet. And I'm showing you this picture because I could shoot myself for missing another good opportunity when I had the my arm keeps popping on this table, so I don't know if y'all are hearing noises or not. I'm going to try to remember to keep my arms off the table. So I apologize if there's any sounds y'all are hearing due to that. Y'all see these wires connected to the crossover. So the one on the far right, what appears to be like bronze on one strand and black on the other, that was the one that I installed going from the new binding post to the crossover. And I don't know if you can see there or not. I'll just expand that some more. But I did not put one of the connectors, one of those little metal spade connectors, on that wire. I just used the bare wire. So I removed one of the potential points of degradation by eliminating those metal spades. As you can see there, the metal spades exist on the white wire with the red dashes, and then also the red and the black wire to the left of that white wire. But they each have those metal spades. And again, like the bolts going into the back of the cabinet, those are not good conductors. So that's just an example of, throughout your system, there may be various touch points, connecting points, that in this case can just be eliminated. Even with speaker wires, if you have speaker wires going to your speakers that some folks call them like lamp cord cables that look like on the back of a lamp, but if you get your wire from Home Depot or Lowe's or Wally World, they may have some good looking copper on the outside, but go back and make sure that they're not the copper coated aluminum cables that they sometimes sell. I know that I had some of those, got rid of those, got some oxygen free copper cables, and even that was an improvement just over the copper coated aluminum cables. That's a good opportunity for benefit by eliminating those connectors and just going with some better quality wiring. So let's look at some of the wires that are currently available on Amazon, and maybe one pair or so from Parts Express. Okay, this is the wire that I was just showing you that I used in the Heresy. So this is $16 for 16 gauge pure copper oxygen free 30 feet worth of wire. So you've got enough wire there to put some maybe in your cabinets, speaker cabinets, and then upgrade from your stereo or your power amp to your speakers perhaps. And this is another brand off of Amazon. Looks like JVEX. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce that. So that's 50 feet for just under $30. Similar type of wire. All right, what else can we find here? Let's see. Okay, and honestly, an 18 gauge wire may be better inside your speakers. If you do wind up making some improvements inside of your speakers, I might recommend going with 18, because if you're just going to use bare wire, whether you're soldering or just crimping these or whatever you're doing, 16 gauge just may be overkill for conductivity. You don't need a gauge that thick in a speaker cabinet, I would assume. But this is just under $16. Not too bad. Okay, and here's one from Parts Express. This is a 50-foot roll of a 14 gauge cable. So if you're looking to, in a lot of high-end audio cables, speaker cables use 14 gauge. I mean, obviously there's 10, 12 gauge out there that are popular as well, but a lot of the standard wires from some of the bigger companies are 14 gauge. So that's got to tell you something right there. And this 50-foot spool is $31.50 basically. So oxygen-free copper there. That's not a bad deal. Get rid of that. Hang on. Okay, so with what we've discussed so far, you can really reduce that noise floor to some extent just by going with some of this better quality copper cable and minimizing the touch points along the way in your signal path, or that you can eliminate, like little connectors and things like that may be of lesser grade metal. So consider those. And then obviously for other electronic related sounds that may be in your system, even if you're not hearing them, it's good to go ahead and try some of those ferrite magnets just to see what kind of benefit they can provide. Again, in my own listening room, I wasn't really having any kind of hum, but just placing one of those on that Furman power conditioner did provide some benefit that I noticed. The system did get a little bit, not necessarily quieter, but my sound refined a little bit. So once you make the signal path improvements, then you're refining that sound even more. Like we talked about earlier, at this point, we're really starting to turn that fine adjustment knob on your binoculars, so to speak, and that fog that you're driving down the road through is really starting to lift, meaning that you're going to be hearing, at this point, some additional clarity, some additional refinement. The tone may kind of warm up a little bit, while at the same time maybe your bass is getting tighter. So it's amazing what the signal path can do, and obviously with the higher end cables, power cables, interconnects, you'll really continue to get some additional benefit. So, but at this point in your system, if you have gone through this process, you should be at a point to where you're hearing things much differently than you have before, and your system really should be starting to take off to some extent, and you should be at a better position of knowing where, if you do want to continue upgrading, whether you want to do some continuing investments in an amplifier or something like that, DAC. I know that with my Cambridge AXR 100 receiver, I have found that even after going through this entire process, it seems that that amplifier just keeps getting better and better with the more improvements I make to the system. So that's just an example of how going through this process you can find out how good your components really are, and that should help you to be able to understand where potential weak links are. Not saying that you got any, but if there are any weak links, this should really help. So again, if you're doing this process, please take notes so that you can understand from one change to the next change. You can use those notes as reference points to reference your changes. And when you get through with this process and you wind up having some good experience, please hit me up in the inbox below. Leave some comments. If you want to send some pictures, I'll be glad to share them as well, along with any testimonials that you may want to provide, just sharing your experience in discovering a soundstage or making some improvements, or maybe just going through this process. You might just find that once you got a soundstage, you didn't really need to upgrade any further. So that's about it for today's video. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching and listening and trying this process. So I'm really eager to hear some of the testimonials. Again, my friend Papa G has already got some great experience just from implementing a soundstage. So he hasn't even gotten to dampening and signal path benefit yet, but he's working on it in the next month. He should be experiencing some of that. So he may wind up being my first testimonial in that regard. So again, thank you for making it this far and for tuning in to the station. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Take care.